folks! On today's New Skill Saturday, I'm going to show you how to make custom t-shirts using the screen printing process that you can do at home. There are a variety of supplies you are going to need for this project, all of which you can get at your local craft store, or you can order online at places like Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, or Amazon. Of course, you're going to need a t-shirt or another fabric item you wish to decorate. And then you're going to need a silk screen printing frame. I'm using one that is 10 by 12 inches. You're also going to need a squeegee and fabric ink screen printing ink. I'm using Speedball as my brand for all three of these items. And you are going to need painter's tape or some sort of masking tape. And you're going to need to create a stencil. So we're going to make a custom stencil using stencil vinyl and transfer tape. These usually come in big rolls or big sheets. You are going to need a piece of stencil vinyl that is close to the size of your frame. So in my case, close to 10 by 12 inches. And then to create your stencil, you're going to need a design. Now, I'm not good at freehand drawing, so I created a design on the computer and printed it out on regular copy paper. I'm going to show you how to take this design and cut it into your stencil vinyl using an X-acto knife, a pencil, and a pen. And then you will need some extra sheets of copy paper to help you with this project. And at the very end, you are going to need an iron or a heat press and an ironing pad or ironing board. So those are all the supplies that you need. Let's get started. Step one is to create a design and transfer it onto your stencil. As I mentioned, I'm not good at freehand drawing, so I found a design on the computer and printed it on regular copy paper. And I'm going to use my pencil and pen to transfer this onto my stencil vinyl and then cut it with my X-acto knife. To prevent anything from shifting, I've already taped down my stencil vinyl. And you will notice that I have a pretty large piece of stencil vinyl in comparison to my design. This is on purpose, and it's very helpful to have such a large piece of stencil vinyl because after we cut it, we are going to attach it to our silk screen frame. The way that this frame works is that there's tiny holes along the frame, and any portion of the frame that is not covered, the ink will pass through. So we only want openings where the design is. So by having such a large piece of stencil vinyl, we are giving ourselves a couple inch margin around the design to prevent unwanted ink from getting onto our t-shirt. So step one is to take our printed design and flip it over to the back side. And with your pencil, we're going to shade pretty heavily all over where the design is. Now that all parts of our design are shaded, we're going to take our design and with the design facing up, we're going to place it on our stencil. I recommend placing it in the center so you have a large margin around. So I'm going to go ahead and place it here. And to prevent any shifting from happening while I trace the design, I am going to tape it down. Now that it's taped in place, I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to follow my lines and I'm going to trace this design onto the stencil vinyl. The more pressure I put when I trace, the better the graphite from the pencil will transfer onto the stencil and leave grooves and lines for me to follow with my X-acto knife. After I've traced my design, I should be able to lift up this paper And notice traced lines and grooves on my stencil. Now that I've traced my design onto the stencil, I'm going to cut it with my X-acto knife. Because I have a lot of straight lines in my design, I decided to borrow a ruler so I have a straight edge to help make these lines a little bit more crisp. After you're done cutting your trace design, we're going to remove the parts of the design that we want the ink to pass through. So we're going to take the tip of our X-acto knife, or you can use a paper clip or a safety pen, and you kind of want to get under that layer of stencil vinyl and pull it up. And this is your opportunity to make any minor adjustments to your design, any cuts that maybe didn't work well. And so for these triangles, for example, I don't want to remove the centerpiece, so I want to be very careful. I'm actually going to hold it down with my finger to make sure I don't accidentally rip it up.
Now that our stencil is cut, we need to transfer it onto our screen printing frame. To do this, we're going to use transfer tape. Transfer tape allows us to move the entire design over to the frame in one piece. This prevents us from having to peel and stick the inside pieces of our design individually. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our transfer tape, and we are going to make sure that it's about the size of our design, and we're going to peel it off. It is sticky on one side, so we're going to peel it, and we're going to line it up with our design in our stencil and lay it down and try to avoid any bubbles or wrinkles. And you just want to press gently to make sure that your stencil is sticking nicely to your transfer tape. And once it's stuck to your transfer tape, you can pull it up and you can peel the stencil off and onto the transfer tape. Now you want to be gentle when you do this. If you go too fast, you might end up losing pieces of your design, especially those inside pieces like my triangles. So you just want to make sure you're not losing any portion of your design when you peel the stencil off. Now that the stencil is stuck to the transfer tape, we can move this onto the screen printing frame. And just a reminder, the stencil and the transfer tape are adhesive. Now when you line this up with your screen printing frame, you want to make sure that you are putting it on the inside of your frame. You're going to line it up and make sure it fits inside your frame, and you're going to gently place it down and press it to the frame. As you're doing this, you want to make sure you're getting any bubbles or wrinkles out. You don't want any wrinkles or bubbles, especially close to your design or around the edges. So just gently work any wrinkles or bubbles out and make sure it lays flat. And once your stencil is stuck on there pretty well, you can start peeling the transfer tape off. Now, just like before, you want to take this slow and be careful. You want to make sure you're not causing any bubbles or wrinkles on your stencil and that you're not losing any parts of your design on accident. Your stencil might start to come up when you're removing your transfer tape, so just gently push it down, and then at the very end you can work on fixing any bubbles or wrinkles. The last thing we're going to do with the stencil is tape it down along the edges. This is to prevent the stencil from bubbling up or peeling off when you're using it with the ink. By taping it down, it secures it in place and prevents ink from getting under the stencil and onto the shirt. So you're going to go ahead and take your masking tape and you're going to apply tape around the edges of your stencil.
Now that we finished preparing our silk screen frame, we are ready to use the ink on the t-shirt. Before we get started, I recommend ironing your t-shirt to get any wrinkles out. And if you have a lint roller, I recommend lint rolling to get any hairs or dust off so you have a clean surface to work with. You're also going to want to take one of your extra sheets of copy paper or cardstock or parchment paper and put it inside your t-shirt where you're going to place your design. This is to protect the ink from soaking through the first layer into the back layer. Now that our t-shirt is prepared and laid flat, we are going to take our frame and line it up where we want it to be. As a general rule of thumb, you want your design to be approximately 3 inches from your collar. And my design is actually a left pocket design, so I'm going to place mine right about here. And I'm just going to let it lay flat, and we want it so that way we have the inside of the frame to work with. I am then going to take my Speedball fabric ink and I am going to place it in my frame. For this you can use your squeegee to help get the ink out, or you can use like a popsicle stick. And a little goes a long way, so you don't want to put too much, but you definitely want to make sure that it's wide enough for your design. So we want to make sure it's going to cover our full design. You're then going to take your squeegee and you're just going to pull your ink across the silk screen in one movement. So we're just going to lay this down and we're just going to pull. And I recommend doing this about 2 or 3 times. If your ink is too thin, it will wash away, or you'll see the color of your t-shirt underneath after it dries. So I'm going to do this one more time, and then one final go. After you use the ink, what you want to do is put this in your sink and wash this with warm water. And then as for the frame, you want to just lift straight up so you don't smudge your design. And then same thing, what you want to do is rinse this in warm water to get the ink out. The nice thing about the silk screens is you can actually reuse these multiple times on different t-shirts, but you definitely want to make sure you wash it before you let the ink dry. If the ink dries and it's in your frame, it'll clog your frame and you won't be able to reuse it. So we're going to let this t-shirt sit and dry for 24 hours. I recommend letting it dry on a flat surface so you don't ruin your design. Now that we've let the ink dry for up to 24 hours, it's time to heat the design so that way the ink cures and sets onto the fabric. Doing this prevents the ink from washing away when you go to put it in your laundry. So what you want to do is set up your ironing board or ironing pad and turn on your iron to whatever fabric material you're using and let it heat up. And then you want to take your extra sheet of copy paper or cardstock or parchment paper and you want to lay it over top of your design. This is to protect your iron from the ink getting onto it and also from protecting your t-shirt. Once you have your paper on top of your design and your iron is heated up, you can take your iron and you can iron over your design for up to 2 minutes. For a design as small as mine, I'm only going to do it for about a minute. And there we go. The ink is set and cured. We're just going to let this cool off and your t-shirt is ready to wear, and you can launder it in cold water in your washing machine. And there you have it, a custom t-shirt using the screen printing process. If you enjoyed this project and tried it on your own, you can post about it on social media and tag us using @AskElmhurst or with the hashtag ElmhurstMakery. Have a nice day.